In a previous episode, I talked about a conversation between Bill Wilson and Father Dowling and how spiritual thirst is not meant to be extinguished. I spoke about a cycle I have lived through more than once and how even sincere effort can quietly become identification if I am not watchful. I ended that episode with a warning that if awareness slips, the cycle begins again. That raised an important question. Why does this keep happening? That question followed me into the night. As I prepared to enter the dream state, I spoke to divinity and I asked for light to be shed on what I needed to see most and what must be understood if suffering is ever to end at its root. Then the answer began to take shape. One morning, in the quiet space between dreaming and waking, as I was returning to my physical body from the dream state, a chorus rose up from the depths of consciousness. Karl Orff, Carmina Burana, O Fortuna. At the time, I didn't even know what it was. I only knew I had heard it before. The phrase literally means, "Oh, fortune," a lament about the power of fate. In ancient mythology, fate was believed to rule everything: gods, mortals, kings, peasants, an unstoppable force. O fortune, ever changing, rising, falling. But what if fortune is not random? What if what keeps happening in our lives is not chaotic? What if it operates according to law? So I continued to look into it. And as I did, I noticed that nearly every image associated with the song contained a wheel. That caught my attention. In the Buddhist tradition, this image appears as the wheel of becoming. Some call it the wheel of life. Others call it the wheel of samsara or the bhava chakra. This wheel depicts the repetition of suffering, and in the center, ignorance, craving, aversion. In other words, not seeing what creates suffering, chasing pleasure, avoiding pain at all costs. Those forces set actions in motion. Actions create consequences. Consequences create new conditions. And the cycle begins again. That cycle is what the wheel represents. In our literature, it says our liquor was but a symptom, so we had to get down to causes and conditions. If alcohol is a symptom, then naturally I asked myself, what are the causes? What are the conditions that keep the wheel turning? As I sat with those questions, a phrase began to surface. Jumping off the board, doing it again. In esoteric symbolism, the board is the place from which action begins. To jump again is recurrence. The same motion, the same causes, the same conditions, the same results. Not punishment, cause and effect. In the Buddhist tradition, the cycle of cause and effect is depicted by the Wheel of Samsara, a wheel of action and consequence, where what we set in motion returns, where causes create conditions, and those conditions become the causes of the next moment. That is the wheel. And unless the causes change, the turning continues. When causes remain untouched, the pattern repeats and the wheel continues turning. Seeing the law was only the beginning because if the causes are still operating in me, the wheel will keep turning no matter how clearly I see it. That is why daily vigilance becomes necessary. Not merely noticing a character defect and checking a box, but observing it carefully as it arises in my thoughts, in my emotions, in my actions. And then taking that pattern into meditation, into stillness, so that it can be fully understood. Because before a defect can be removed, it must first clearly be seen. And that process begins with comprehension.